Hey everyone, just check out this new isekai for this July season. Reincarnating into a fantasy world with overpowered abilities sounds easy, right? But for Haruto, the beginning of his journey wasn't that smooth. Because his incredible magical ability couldn't be measured, his parents, the king and queen of that kingdom, abandoned him in a forest at the mercy of various monsters. Fortunately, Haruto manages to survive and embarks on a new life far from his true parents. And that's the story we're going to follow here today. But before we start, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos, okay? Let's get to the recap. The anime starts by showing a bit of Haruto's life, and he tells us that 5 years ago, when he was in the last year of junior high, he stopped going to school because of intense bullying. Since then, he became a recluse and just spent his days playing games and watching anime with no hope of changing that. One day, while watching something on his phone, a bright light shines and transports him to the sky. There, he meets a goddess who congratulates him, saying that due to circumstances, he has been reincarnated. The goddess explains that in this new world, magic is absolute, and the amount of magic one has determines their worth. After saying that, she adds that to compensate for his miserable life until then, she will give him an overpowered ability and a lot of magical capacity. And then she tells him to enjoy his new life very much, but you'll soon see that this goddess is clueless and will leave Haruto in a mess. Then Haruto agrees and says that he wants to reincarnate. In his thoughts, he says that he will use his overpowered ability to live an easy life in that world. Finally, he is reincarnated, but unlike what he thought, he appears as a baby. He quickly realizes that he was born into the royal family of that world, his father is the king, and his mother is the queen. Haruto is happy about this, as he thinks he will have an easy life. Right after his birth, the king orders that they perform a magical evaluation on Haruto, as magic is what matters in that world. Remember what I said about the goddess interfering in Haruto's life? Well, she gave him so much power that the measuring instruments can't quantify his incredible abilities, leading them to believe that Haruto has almost no magical ability. After learning this, they don't hesitate and decide to sacrifice the boy, as no one can know that the son of the king and queen is so weak. They will simply claim that he was stillborn. Then, the king orders them to discard the baby in a forest far away from the palace. And so it is done. Haruto finds himself in a basket in the middle of the forest, unable to move because he is just a baby. He remembers his ability to use barriers and tries to use it to escape. He tries to imagine it and quickly manages to create his first barrier. Haruto finds it easy and is able to manipulate it as he wishes. He soon activates a barrier around himself and begins to fly. And at that moment, a gigantic wolf appears behind him and tells everyone watching the anime to subscribe to the channel and give that thumbs up to the video, so make sure to subscribe, otherwise, he will bite you. Actually, the wolf appears and tries to snap at him. However, his barrier is very strong, and the wolf doesn't make a scratch on Haruto. After that, he creates several smaller barriers and shoots them at the wolf, but it doesn't have much effect. He has the idea of using the barriers to grab some trees from the forest and throws them all at the giant wolf. Now, he manages to deal some damage to the wolf. However, the wolf still gets up, and this time, Haruto simply takes part of the soil from that forest and decides to throw it at the wolf. At this moment, the wolf, or actually, a female wolf, as we heard her voice, becomes desperate and tells him to stop. Haruto doesn't understand who spoke and continues with the plan to crush the female wolf, but she yells again, and Haruto realizes that it was her who was speaking. After that, she apologizes to him and says that she was just considering eating him to replenish her mana. She didn't think he was so strong. She asks who the heck he is to be so powerful. Haruto tries to speak, but as he is just a baby, he hasn't learned to talk yet. He has an idea and creates a barrier that translates his thoughts into sound, allowing him to communicate with the giant wolf. He tells her his name and explains that he was born as the son of the king, but due to having a low level of mana, he was abandoned in that forest. The wolf says she doesn't understand, as she can see his mana, and it far surpasses human limits. After saying that, she deduces that he must be the demon king. Haruto, fearful of denying it and being perceived as weak, confirms and claims to be the demon king, even though he isn't. The wolf says that now it makes sense for him to be so strong, and she quickly surrenders, asking him to order her around. Haruto, on the other hand, says it's not necessary and asks her only not to attack him anymore. That would be enough. The wolf then swore to protect him with her life and reveals at that moment that she is a fire fenrir. After that, Haruto expresses his gratitude and calls her Flay for short. At this moment, she tells him that he not only spared her life but also gave her a new name. Because of this, the pact of master and servant is now established. Flay assures him that she will serve him forever. However, Haruto starts feeling weak and collapses to the ground. He is very debilitated as he hasn't been breastfed until now. Upon hearing this, Flay transforms into her human form and says that she will breastfeed him. Haruto becomes very embarrassed upon seeing her undressed, and he quickly asks her to put some clothes on. He creates a barrier around her, and suddenly, a tight-fitting leather outfit appears on her body, which still leaves Haruto feeling embarrassed as she looks quite sensual. After that, Flay says she will breastfeed him soon and then removes her clothes again, claiming that she can only breastfeed him after getting pregnant and instructs Haruto to put his seed inside her. At this moment, Haruto realizes that Flay is indeed clueless. After realizing that it won't be possible for her to breastfeed him, Flay dresses again and apologizes to him. While they are talking, Flay hears someone approaching and goes to see who it is. A man in armor appears and approaches them. The man says that he came to take the child, but Flay immediately refuses to give him up, stating that Haruto has just become her master, so he belongs to her. The knight explains that the child is a relative of his and was abandoned for certain reason, but he came to save him. He also thought that the child might be hungry, so he brought breast milk for him. Haruto gets excited because he hasn't eaten for a long time. However, Flay denies and says that she will breastfeed him herself. The man then tells her that she won't be able to raise a human child either. He proposes an idea to her, suggesting that he will take the child, and she can come along as his servant. Flay agrees, saying that it's okay as long as she can stay by Haruto's side. And so, the knight pretends that the boy has already gone to bed, and they head towards the knight's house. At this moment, there is a time skip in the anime, and Haruto is now 9 years old. He lives happily with his new adoptive family and even has a little sister with whom he doesn't get along very well. Haruto feels very sad that he can't make his sister like him. On the other hand, she adores Flay and asks to play with her later. Some time later, Haruto is in his bed, contemplating how to leave home and venture into that world. He even created a magical robot that looks just like him, but unfortunately, it still can't move or talk. Later, his father says that from that day on, he will teach Haruto how to use the sword, as he still believes that Haruto's magic levels are low, and he needs to be able to fend for himself in case something bad happens. They start training, and Haruto charges at his father with a wooden sword. The boy delivers such a strong attack that it breaks the wooden sword on the ground and creates a large hole where the blow landed. Impressed, his father decides to test his reflexes. He says he will attack Haruto with all his strength, and Haruto must try to dodge the blow. His father attacks, and at the last moment, Haruto manages to dodge, leaving his father amazed. He explains that such a feat is usually only possible for people at level 30 or higher, something quite challenging in that world. His father decides to continue training him as he sees great potential in Haruto, but his movements are still amateurish. At this moment, Haruto remembers that one day he tried to see if he had 3 digits of magic power, but to his disappointment, he found another 0 before the 2, making him think that he was really weak, considering that the strongest human has only 77 units of magic power. Here, we see that Haruto is way above average, as he possesses an incredible 1002 units of power, much higher than the strongest human. Later that night, Haruto's mother and father talk about him. His father mentions that Haruto's training started today and that he was surprised by his strength. He even suspects that Haruto might be the reincarnated demon king, as there are some stories that indicate this has happened in the royal family. His mother is not convinced, as he doesn't have horns or a tail, but his father suggests that the royal mark may have inhibited the growth of those features. And perhaps this is why the demon Flay shows so much respect for him. Haruto's mother refuses to believe this and says that Haruto is just a normal child like any other. Well, she couldn't be more wrong, right? Haruto's father agrees that he thinks the same, and regardless of what happens, he will make their son happy. And today's video starts with Haruto commenting that his father has been really busy lately. The good part about this is that he doesn't have to train in fencing every day. But suddenly, while monitoring one of his barriers, Haruto overhears a woman talking about injuries and bandages. He decides to take a look and see what's going on. He observes that there are several badly wounded soldiers and goes to talk to his father. His father explains that there's been a wave of bandit attacks in the region where they live. He went to take care of them, but unfortunately, he fell into an ambush, and many of his men ended up injured. His father is deeply sorry and can't understand how he fell into such a trap. Haruto, seeing his frustrated father, becomes very angry with the bandits who caused all of that. They walk among the soldiers slowly, and continue walking. As he passes by, he places various healing barriers on all the wounded, and quickly, everyone heals and is happy about it. Haruto's father is astonished and can't make sense of what happened. That night, Haruto gets up and opens the door. He sees Flay standing there and tries to talk to her, but she doesn't utter a single word. Haruto remembers that he told her to shut up earlier, and the goofy fox is still following that order. Haruto recalls the command, says he's sorry, and apologizes to her. He tells her she can speak freely again, and Flay apologizes if she offended her master in any way. Haruto asks Flay to come with him quickly. He uses his monitoring barriers to try to locate the base of the bandits who attacked his father, and soon he finds it. He sees that they are exactly where his father was attacked, and upon seeing this, he suspects that someone on their side is feeding information to the supposed bandits. Haruto then decides, with Flay's help, to take down all the bandits at once. They fly off, but as they leave, Haruto's little sister sees them flying and is greatly impressed. Next, they arrive at the location and observe the alleged bandits talking about ambushing Haruto's father. Haruto says he now understands what happened. He uses a barrier that immobilizes everyone, and one of them starts blabbering. Haruto simply throws him against the wall with great force to set an example for the others. He says that if they don't want the same fate as their comrade, they must answer the questions he has. They spill the beans, and now Haruto knows that they aren't bandits at all. They are soldiers from the neighboring empire who infiltrated disguised as bandits. They mention that there was an accomplice who facilitated their entry into the empire, but they claim they don't know anything beyond that. Haruto, deep in thought, says that this couldn't have been done without an authority higher than his father's and starts wondering if someone from that kingdom would have an interest in getting rid of his father. Haruto thanks them for the information and has Flay burn down everything in that location. At this point, the not-so-bandits complain that they did everything he asked, and therefore, he should let them go. Haruto, on the other hand, says he doesn't care about them in the slightest, and he also remembers that they ambushed his father and could have even killed him if they had the chance. And for that reason, he would never forgive them. Flay obeys his command and turns everything into ashes. Haruto says he doesn't know much about the Empire's conflicts, but they started it, so he shouldn't show mercy. He adds that for now, he'll send an anonymous letter to his father explaining the whole situation. The next day, this letter reaches his father, who is shocked because, despite his defeat at the hands of the enemy soldiers, he's incredulous that one person could have defeated them all. Did Haruto's sister hear everything, while she was in her father's lap? After hearing this, she says she has something to do and leaves. Outside, she remembers seeing her brother and Flay flying and puts the pieces together, implying that they were the ones who handled the whole situation. She goes to talk to Flay and asks her if there are two of her brother, since last night she saw him flying with Flay, but when she checked his room, she saw him sleeping. What she doesn't know is that the person she saw sleeping, it's just a magically created doll. Flame is surprised that you've already liked and subscribed to the channel. Don't let her down, make sure to subscribe. In fact, she's surprised that Charlotte noticed Haruto's incredible power, and she starts telling everything to the little girl. She says he was blessed with immense power, so much so that not even her, a high-level demon, can fight against him. After that, Leia is going to tell Haruto that she found out everything. And after that, Charlotte and her sister start following him everywhere, but whenever he tries to talk to her, she always runs away, leaving Haruto sad and thinking that his little sister hates him. This pursuit continues for several days, and at one point, while Haruto is resting, an alarm sounds, and he realizes that the Imperial soldiers have decided to attack his mother and sister. Wouldn't have time to arrive. Meanwhile, his mother tries to protect herself using magic and running with Charlotte. While they flee, Haruto uses a barrier to communicate with his sister and guides them to the best escape route, until they reach a cliff and jump down using magic to cushion their fall. Down there, they find a cave and hide inside it. Haruto's mother sees that the place is filled with glowing moss, and this way, she's certain they won't be able to hide. They definitely wouldn't be able to hide. She leaves Charlotte in the cave and tells her she will meet with the person who guided her to seek help. In the meantime, she should stay put inside the cave. She says she's not sure who the person is, but one thing she knows is that he's the hero of justice, someone who defends others. Charlotte cries and asks her mother not to go, but her mother says it's okay and she should just wait quietly, everything will be fine. Then she goes out and comes face to face with the Imperial soldier. They find it odd to encounter his mother and quickly instruct their men to search for the child. She realizes she can't be captured, so she has the brilliant idea to take her own life. What a crazy woman, seriously. But before she can carry out this nonsense, the knife shatters, and she faints. At this moment, we see who did it. And guess who it was? None other than our hero, Haruto. Seeing his mother unconscious makes him really angry, and with a single attack, he defeats all the Imperial soldiers. After that, he takes his mother to Charlotte, saying she's alive and will be alright soon. Haruto tries to disguise his voice so she won't recognize him, but Charlotte senses his dark aura and immediately knows it's Haruto who's talking. And before he leaves, she calls out to him, and Haruto realizes he's in trouble. Charlotte, a bit embarrassed, asks if Haruto is the hero of justice who saves people when they need help. Haruto doesn't understand, but decides to go along with his sister's idea so as not to scare her. Charlotte says she knew since the day she saw him flying with Flea, and finally, she approaches him. She admits she was totally wrong about Haruto. She thought he was a demon or something because of his eerie aura. Haruto tells her she must keep it a secret, since no one can know the identity of the hero of justice. She agrees and says she'll do it, even if she has to lie to her father. After that, Haruto says he'll take care of the bad guys outside, and in the meantime, she should look after their mother. Charlotte agrees, and he leaves. That night, Haruto's father is informed that his wife and Charlotte are both safe. They tell him that Flea found them and is escorting them right now. Plus, some guards were injured, but when they were found, they were completely healed. Gold, Haruto's father, says he'd like to thank the person who saved his wife and daughter. But apparently, the person who did it has no intention of revealing themselves. Little does he know that the person who saved them was right there beside him. He asks Haruto what he thinks of this person. Haruto, trying to hide his identity, answers that he'll stand by his side as long as they don't do anything wrong. And his father adds that Charlotte is calling this person the hero of justice, but for now, they'll just observe him. Haruto slips up and says that even if Imperial soldiers come pretending to be bandits to attack, the so-called hero of justice would take care of them. And at that moment, his father asks him how he knows about the Imperial soldiers when he never mentioned it. Haruto tries to play it off and says it's obvious, since the bandits should attack, and not a stronghold like that, and he assumed that was the case, especially since they even went after his mother. Haruto also says it's strange they managed to infiltrate even after his father increased security at the border. His father then imagines they must have entered before the security measures were put in place. He says that sometimes Haruto doesn't seem like a 9-year-old boy, and in his thoughts, Haruto apologizes and says he's actually quite mature. At that moment, Charlotte and her mother arrive and hug her father. Then, somewhat surprisingly, Charlotte comes running to Haruto and hugs him, causing confusion for everyone since she always kept her distance from him and never exchanged a word. As she hugs him, she says she loves her brother very much now. And upon seeing this, Flea becomes quite jealous, as she's always wanted to be that close to Haruto. She starts urging the girl to stay away from him. Today's video starts with Charlotte inviting Haruto to play, which in the first episode would have been completely unthinkable, since she always avoided him. Then she hugs him and sticks to him. Haruto in his thoughts says that since the incident in the forest, Charlotte has been coming to his room every day. He says he has no idea how to deal with her now that she likes him. But despite all this, he says it's not bad, it's like a little animal loving him. Look at the comparisons this guy makes, man. At one point, Charlotte sees a display on Haruto's table and asks what it is. Haruto says it's monitoring magic, and Charlotte becomes very interested. She says her brother is really amazing for using ancient magic so easily. Charlotte also mentions that there are some books about ancient magic in their library and asks Haruto if he wants her to take him there. Haruto agrees, and soon he begins to study ancient magic. He discovers that ancient magic could be non-elemental, unlike current magic that necessarily requires an element to be cast. He also learns that there are gods that can travel to different worlds. And in his thoughts, Haruto says he's seen this in an anime in his past life. Remembering anime, he regrets that it's been a long time since he's watched any, and that's his only complaint about living in that world. Charlotte asks what on earth this anime he's talking about is. And Haruto explains, saying it's basically moving pictures that speak. Charlotte is really impressed, since no images move in that world, and she becomes very interested. Haruto says he'll show her soon, but in his thoughts, he admits he has no idea how to do it. 2 weeks pass, and Haruto has managed to connect his magic to Earth's internet. Don't ask me how, he didn't explain that in the anime either. He says his anime subscription is still active, so he starts watching anime again. He brings Charlotte to watch, and she's really excited. He asks her to pick one, and she chooses one with a little girl. When she sees the girl moving and using magic, she's completely amazed. But Charlotte has a problem. She doesn't understand a single word they're saying. She asks Haruto to teach her Japanese. Haruto thinks it'll be hard for her to learn a new language, but he's wrong. Charlotte learns really fast, and Haruto is completely shocked that she mastered katakana in just 2 hours. For those who don't know, katakana is like the Japanese symbol alphabet you see on the screen. 2 weeks pass since then, and Charlotte comes to Haruto's room every day to watch anime. He's turned the girl into an otaku, dude. Before anyone gets funny in the comments, I know it's botom, but let's admit, otaku sounds way better. Haruto lets her watch, and in his thoughts, he says Charlotte learned Japanese from watching anime and basically already knows the language. Haruto thinks it's amazing, and wonder if his little sister is actually a genius. He says if that's the case, he shouldn't just let her watch anime all day, but he feels bad taking it away since she's having so much fun. But Haruto decides and says he has to, as the older brother he has to be more strict. After finishing the episode she was watching, before she goes to the next one, he tells her to stop. Haruto says she can't watch a whole season in one go, and he decides to allow her to watch only 3 hours of anime a day. Charlotte is completely shocked, and asks why. Haruto responds that it's not healthy for kids to watch anime all day, but Charlotte argues that it doesn't make sense, since she feels really good. Haruto stands his ground and calls her, as it's dinner time. Charlotte becomes quite dejected after that. At dinner, Haruto's father says they've been spending a lot of time together and asks what they've been doing. Charlotte answers that they've been studying ancient magic all this time. Haruto's mother is happy that Charlotte is helping him, as it's always been her dream for them to get along. Then Haruto goes to take a bath, and Charlotte shows up in the bathroom right after. Haruto asks what she's doing there. She says that now that she has no more anime to watch, she has nothing to do and decided to take a bath. Haruto thinks and says there's nothing wrong with that, since they're both kids. But it does seem kind of weird to him, because his mind is that of an adult. While they're taking a bath, Charlotte looks at something on Haruto and becomes paralyzed, looking at it. But don't worry, it's not what you're thinking. She's looking at the mark on his chest, which we already know is the real mark. All those born of royalty have that mark. However, Haruto can't say that. And when she asks what that is, he simply replies that it's the mark of the hero of justice, and she must keep it a secret and not tell anyone. They finish bathing, and before going to sleep, Charlotte goes to say goodnight to her brother. Isn't that cute? After that, Haruto says goodbye and goes to his bed to sleep. So far, so good, but after a while, he feels something climbing onto his bed. And guess who it is? Yes, exactly, Charlotte. Before Haruto can even say anything, the girl falls asleep snuggling up to him. At that moment, Haruto sees his mother at the door of the room, appearing quite happy that they're so close. The next morning, Haruto's father leaves, saying he's going to take care of the remaining bandits in the area. Haruto's mother tells him to be careful. Charlotte then becomes worried about her father, but Haruto says she shouldn't worry, because this time, they are really inexperienced and untrained bandits, unlike those knights who pretended to be bandits before. And thus, his father will handle them easily with his men. Charlotte asks if there's no way for everyone to be happy without fighting, and Haruto responds that it's easier said than done. Charlotte asks if it's difficult even for him, who is the hero of justice. She adds that she thinks that's what his powers should be used for, leaving Haruto in a dilemma. He says there's no choice, and he'll agree to her request. And the girl, who's completely excited from watching anime so much, asks if he will transform and join the fight. Haruto doesn't understand, but he has to stay in character and decides to play along. He uses a barrier to change his clothes, and the little girl goes crazy. She thinks she's living in an anime, man. She asks to go with him, but Haruto flatly refuses, saying it's too dangerous for her, leaving her disappointed, but she agrees when he proposes setting up a monitoring barrier for her to watch everything while he's out. But with a condition: you who are watching, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Fair enough? Subscribe. Haruto leaves, and using his barriers, he encounters the bandits. He blocks their exit from the cave, and thus, he captures them all at once. He arrives at the scene and strikes some embarrassing poses. The bandits attack him, and Haruto defeats them all. After doing so, his father arrives and asks him some questions. He asks if it was him who defeated all the bandits alone, and also asks if it was him who saved his wife and daughter the other day. He says yes and strikes a pose, saying he's the executor of justice and will always save the weak and oppressed. Then he flies away. After arriving, Haruto is exhausted from portraying that character. But Charlotte is really excited and asks when he'll go out again. At that moment, Haruto realizes he's gotten himself into trouble. She'll always want him to do things like that. And so, he continued to battle again and again. And after a while, he became known as the Black Knight. I hope this doesn't trend on Twitter. Sometime later, Haruto finally manages to make his mannequin move and speak. He's really happy because now he can leave it in his place and explore the world. One day, Charlotte wakes up beside him and is very surprised to see two Harutos talking. She asks which one is hers. At one point, a maid knocks on the door saying it's almost time for him to leave. Haruto tells his clone to go in his place, but it refuses, because it's just as lazy as the original. Haruto then goes to his appointment. He meets the prince and princess, who are actually his blood siblings, but no one there except his father knows. It's easy to see that the prince is a sly one. He starts by saying the place is dirty, and that's what he expected from Hicks. Then he disrespects his own older sister, saying she's just a political tool, and she shouldn't act like they're equal. He's the future king, and she'll just be sent off to marry another noble. At one point, the brat comes to talk to Haruto and calls him adopted level 2, since everyone thinks Haruto only has 2 units of magical power. When the prince sees Haruto looking at him, he challenges him to a duel. Even though Haruto's father tries to avoid it, the sly prince insists. A while later, they are to duel, and the prince says he'll take it easy on Haruto because he's so weak. Haruto uses an appraisal skill to check his power, and finds that he's not so strong. Haruto uses a protection barrier on himself and lets him hit. The boy thinks he's making an impact and says he should fight if he can. Haruto then realizes he can fight, and suddenly appears behind the kid and taps his head. He gets up, but every time he does, he takes another beating, until he gives up. The princess is impressed that he's only level 2, and her father says he's simply accepted the way he is. At this point, the boy tries to appeal by using magic. Haruto simply uses an absorption shield, and it's of no use. Haruto asks him if he should return all his magic at once, and the prince quickly surrenders. That night, Haruto thinks that the people in the capital already knew he was level 2, and wonder if they're investigating. But he says it doesn't matter, since they discarded him without a second thought. And Charlotte informing Haruto that she found some suspicious people through the monitoring barriers. At this moment, Flay returns and says that he will help his master in his hero missions. Charlotte starts talking about how in every hero anime, there is a loyal sidekick who always saves the hero from trouble, and she says that in their case, Flay would be that person since she is always by his side. Flay agrees and adds that she will always help her master when he needs it. They both pressure Haruto to go along with Charlotte's idea. Haruto is a bit reluctant since he doesn't want to do this. However, he has no choice. He has to do this to maintain appearances for his sister, who truly believes that he is the true hero of justice and has no suspicion that it's a lie. Later, Haruto talks to Flay and advises her not to be too violent since Charlotte will be watching everything, and it wouldn't be cool for her to witness something brutal or scary. Flay agrees, and they go after some thugs. The thugs are celebrating the success of their last robbery when Haruto suddenly asks them what they are doing. Because it's very dark, they can't see Haruto and ask who is talking to them. Haruto then appears, making a dramatic entrance, announcing that the Black Knight hero has arrived to bring justice. Shortly after, Flay appears behind the thugs and also makes an embarrassing entrance, calling herself the Scarlet Knight. Flay wastes no time and sets the thugs on fire. Seeing that she won't hold back, Haruto quickly puts up a barrier to protect them from the maniac fox's attacks. Then, Haruto gives her a scolding and asks if she didn't hear him when he said he didn't want explicit violence during their patrols. Flay says she understands, but since they disrupted her master, that's what they deserve. Haruto says the situation is under control and releases Flay. Later, they return home, and Charlotte praises them for their incredible performance. Flay agrees, but Haruto, tired, just wants to sleep. Flay comments that she was attacking with all her might and can't understand why she couldn't hurt those scoundrel thugs. Little does she know that Haruto put up a barrier to protect them from the maniac fox. The next day, we see the scoundrel prince very upset about losing to Haruto. He claims to be the son of the king and the princess of light and shouldn't have lost to a simple country bumpkin. Then, his butler informs him that it's almost time for the banquet and advises him to invite Charlotte for a visit tomorrow. The prince tries to refuse, saying he's not interested, but the butler insists, saying it's very important that he invites her. He eventually agrees and says he will do it. We return to Haruto, and Charlotte tells him that the prince has invited her for a visit tomorrow, so she will be busy part of the day. Haruto, fearing that something might happen to his little sister, decides to go with her to protect her if anything happens. During the night, he thinks it's better to be cautious and checks the travel route. While observing all the points, he comes across some hooded guys performing some suspicious magic. Upon seeing this, Haruto decides to take a look at what they are doing. He quickly arrives and asks out of the blue what they are doing. The strange guys are startled and ask who he is. The hooded figures then decide to attack him, but Haruto quickly defeats all of them at once. However, they still had time to summon some zombie skeletons to attack Haruto. They send them after the boy, but Haruto easily takes them out one by one. But he realizes that every time he breaks the skeletons, they reassemble and come after him. Haruto says he expected this to happen and decides to use a different strategy. He notices that the skeletons have a kind of core in their chest and uses his barriers to take control of the skeletons through their cores. The skeletons then turn against the suspicious guys and start beating them. Seeing that it's going south, they play their last card. They summon a giant golem that appears to be quite powerful. Haruto is very excited about it, and the golem attacks him. Haruto uses a simple barrier, thinking it's enough, but the golem throws him away. Haruto observes that the golem also has something strange in its chest. He quickly throws a stone spear at the spot he spotted, causing the golem to stop, just like the skeleton, and it also turns against the summoners. Haruto captures all the guys and asks them who their leader is. However, none of them speak up. Haruto tries to think of a way to make them talk and soon has an idea. He commands the skeletons to dig a hole and throws the strange men inside. Haruto tells the leader that if he doesn't want them to be buried alive, it's better that he reveals who ordered this attack. The leader of the wizards, with no alternative, discloses that they are in the service of the queen, and she was the one who ordered the attack. Haruto asks him what the purpose of all this is, and the guy says that the goal is to prevent you from liking and subscribing to this channel, but you're tough and you're going to subscribe and like anyway, right? Subscribe now. In reality, the queen's objective was to get rid of Charlotte. Haruto asks why, since she's just a child. The guy continues explaining and says that her magical aptitude must surpass even that of the queen, and that's why the queen fears that Charlotte will take her place when she's older. The guy also reveals that they were previously using imperial soldiers, but since they failed, the queen decided to use summoners to accomplish the mission of eliminating the innocent girl. Haruto remembers all the attacks they've endured and connects all the dots. Upon realizing that all these attacks were ordered by the queen, he becomes quite angry. And he says he now understands why they abandoned her when she was just a newborn. Haruto realizes that the queen is a horrible person who does everything to maintain her status and eliminates anything that gets in her way. Upon discovering all this, Haruto is consumed with rage. In his thoughts, he says he would never forgive someone who wishes harm to his family, even if it's his biological mother doing it. The next day, they go to the visit that the prince invited Charlotte to. During the journey, Charlotte tries to console the wicked prince, telling him he doesn't need to be upset about losing to his brother because he never had a chance from the beginning. Instead of calming him down, this only makes him angrier. To make matters worse, the prince's own sister agrees with Charlotte. Haruto tries to keep the peace but ends up making things worse because the prince gets very angry that Haruto feels sorry for him. At some point, they start suspecting that Haruto might be a demon. However, They soon abandon the idea since his ears are not pointed and he has no horns. And Charlotte confirms this, saying she takes baths with him every day and has never seen anything strange about him. Upon saying this, both the princess and the prince become very scared, as it's strange for anyone that a boy and a girl, even if they're siblings, bathe together. Afterwards, they arrive at the location, which turns out to be a wheat field in a village. Charlotte finds it amazing and immediately starts playing in the middle of the field. Then, Haruto goes to talk to his father. He says he has a question, and his father encourages him to ask it. Haruto asks what he would do if he found out that the queen is trying to eliminate Charlotte. His father looks serious and says that he also realized this a few days ago. He knew that she saw Charlotte as an enemy, but he never imagined that the queen would actually be after their daughter. He adds that the queen wants to get rid of them, and they need to come up with a plan to defend themselves and ensure that this doesn't happen, no matter what they have to do. But he also says that the queen is, after all, the queen, and there's not much that can be done without causing a major uproar in the kingdom. Haruto then asks why he doesn't replace the queen himself. His father responds that he's not good with politics but mentions that there's a person who could do it but is still very young. He's obviously referring to Charlotte, as she's very intelligent and has the potential to become much stronger than the current queen. He then makes Haruto promise that he will protect Charlotte until she becomes the next queen. And that's how today's video ends. Did you like it? Then, leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. Also, leave a comment to engage and help me out. For the loyal subscribers who stayed until the end, I have an amazing video here at the end. It tells the story of Lucio, an employee of a company who was hit by a stray bullet and was reborn in a world of fantasy and magic. Now, he dedicates himself to becoming the strongest healer of all. Go check it out, it's really cool, alright? Until next time, bye. With one of the queen's guards apologizing for failing to send the little girl away. The queen asks why they failed, and he responds. He says they failed because of a guy named the Black Knight, and we already know who that is, right? The guard adds that this guy is going after all the supposed villains throughout the kingdom's borders, making their attacks impossible. He also mentions that it's highly likely that the summoner's unit fell victim to him as well, and we confirm that, as in the previous video, Haruto took down those deceitful mages. The queen asks if that's all, then promptly throws wine in the guard's face and says she can't tolerate it, especially since it wasn't just once or twice. They failed 3 times, and she can't understand how it can be so difficult to eliminate a simple little girl. The queen starts thinking and says that if Charlotte grows up, she will indeed become a threat, and she can't let that happen under any circumstances. She also mentions that she might take care of the Black Knight herself, as in her words, he's a reckless man to interfere with the Princess of Light. She refers to herself in the third person, man, be careful with people who do that, usually, they're not normal. Then, the queen suggests she might use the sacred sword she used to defeat the Demon King to deal with him, and at that moment, Haruto's voice appears, asking if she really wants to fight him. The queen is startled and asks who is speaking. The guards quickly step in front of the queen to defend her, but Haruto easily incapacitates them. Haruto makes a dramatic entrance and says the Black Knight has arrived. The queen asks how he got there, and Haruto says it was a piece of cake to get in. He advises her to prepare something stronger next time. The queen decides to attack Haruto and summons 3 magic circles. Haruto is surprised since he didn't know this was possible. With the first one, she surrounds Haruto in a water bubble, intending to drown him. But, as expected, Haruto easily frees himself from it. Next, she throws crystals at him, but again, he defends himself. Finally, she decides to set the kid on fire, and this time, he doesn't defend himself. Haruto takes the full brunt of the attack, and the conniving queen is all excited, thinking she got rid of our protagonist. But to her dismay, Haruto is stronger than ever. I think he's been drinking some power juice. Feeling smug, the queen starts to talk about how easy it was. She says they gave the Black Knight too much credit, and he's nothing. However, to her horror, Haruto rises as if nothing happened. Now, It's bad for her. The queen is in shock and asks who the hell this man in front of her is. Haruto quickly raises his hand and shoots a blast of magic at the queen. She manages to defend herself, but her expression is completely different now. The one who was feeling so confident a moment ago has lost her nerve. Now, we have a queen who's scared and on edge. Haruto says that if she survived that, she should take him seriously. He continues to taunt the queen, who keeps defending herself. However, he tells her that she will run out of mana soon and adds that not even the Demon King had so much power. In a desperate attempt, she decides to use her sword and charges at Haruto. But he quickly draws his sword, and they engage in an utterly insane battle. At one point, the queen thinks she's at an advantage and regains her confidence, claiming she's the best in the world with a sword. Man, this woman never learns. Haruto then tells her that it doesn't make sense because what she did was nothing special. He disarms the conniving queen and, in a terrifying manner, tells her that it's time to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Look, I'd do it if I were you. Haruto is not messing around. Subscribe. Actually, he turns and says that it's time for her punishment. He then puts a slave collar on the queen. But look, something caught my attention in this scene. Something big. Can you see what it is? Of course. You can, right? Look at the size of that collar, man, it's huge. After that, the queen falls into that position and asks what he did. Haruto says that if she tries to remove it forcibly, her head will roll. He also tells her not to lay a finger on Marquis Gold Zenfis and his family. If she does that, she already knows what will happen. He finishes by saying that the collar will never come off until he forgives her. If she defies his request, she can say goodbye to her head and leaves. After that, we have a time skip, and now 5 years have passed, and Haruto is 15 years old. Haruto is with Charlotte and Flay. He mentions in his thoughts that since he gave Princess of Light a beating, they've been living in peace without any attacks. He also says that even though Charlotte is older, she's still an otaku. Then she makes a request to Haruto. She wants him to use a special technique she saw in an anime, and Haruto does it just as she asks because he can't say no to his little sister. He does just as she asked, and a gigantic crater opens in the ground. Right after that, his parents arrive and ask what happened. Haruto quickly summons his clone behind him, dressed as the Black Knight, and blames everything on him, making the clone fly away. His father talks to him and mentions that they've been living peacefully for 5 years without any attacks from the queen. He also mentions that the conniving queen has never appeared in public during these last 5 years. He says there are rumors that she started using a slave collar, and people are saying she can't remove it. In his thoughts, Haruto says it's a relief, and with this peace, he can finally live his life as a recluse. However, to his dismay, his father calls him and asks him to do something completely absurd, at least in his view. His father's request is for him to start attending the school in the capital starting from spring. Haruto is completely traumatized by schools, given that in his past life, he suffered a lot of bullying and eventually gave up on studying because of it. When he hears his father talk about this, he is completely shocked and says he doesn't want to go at all. His father pleads with him to go, as it was a direct request from the princess, and his father would be in a difficult position if he doesn't. Haruto realizes there's no way out of it and that he'll have to go. His father mentions that the conniving prince will also study there with him, and the letter from the king stated that they were expected to study together to contribute to the kingdom's development. Haruto starts lamenting that just when he was about to become a recluse and spend his days watching anime and playing video games, his father drops this bombshell. Poor Haruto. Leave an F for him in the comments. His father tells him to be careful, as even though the queen is quiet, she might be using Princess Marion to act. Haruto says that if there's no other choice, he'll have to go to school, and his father thanks him and tells him to choose an assistant to go with him. He even considers having Flay go with him, but his father says that's not possible. His mother appears at this moment and offers to go since there's no one better to take care of him. However, both Haruto and his father reject the idea. After that, Haruto goes to his room and talks to his clone. Haruto tries to convince him to go in his place, and while the clone studies, the real Haruto can stay at home watching anime and playing video games all day. Well, the clone is an exact copy of him, so obviously, he refuses and says he won't do it. Haruto tries to argue that it would only be for a short time since his clone can't use magic, and they would consider him inept and expel him from school. Nevertheless, he refuses and asks if, in his case, he he could get away with it, and everything would be fine. Haruto says that if something happens to him, it's not a problem. He would just need to make another one. The clone gets desperate and asks how many clones he has made. Haruto says he was just kidding, and the clone starts throwing a fit, saying he doesn't want to be a clone of this evil person anymore. After much tantrum, Haruto convinces him, and he finally agrees, albeit against his will. After that, Haruto goes to a cabin on the other side of the mountain. He says he spent a long time building it until it was finally ready. There, he finds his place of rest, and he can have peace and watch his anime and play video games. However, Charlotte found out about it and now always comes with Flay to disturb Haruto. At one point, she arrives and says she came to watch anime. She starts watching and gets very excited about a magical girl anime. She even has a fantasy. After finishing the episode for the day, Charlotte says it was wonderful, but she regrets not being able to watch more since they are pressuring her to study more. That's why she had to distance herself from her brother, and she can't even come to the cabin without asking Flay for permission. She becomes very sad, saying she wants to watch more anime. Seeing his little sister upset, Haruto says he can try using his teleportation magic. However, he has only tested it on objects and never on a living being to know if there's any issue. Flay suggests that he tests it on his clone, and Haruto finds it a bit cruel but eventually accepts. However, the clone refuses outright, saying he won't go, no matter what. Flay gets angry and goes through the portal herself, forcefully taking the kid with her. They manage to test it and confirm that there's no problem using the portal on living beings. Thus, the distance problem is solved. And that's how today's video concludes. Did you like it? Then hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to show some love, alright? Also, leave a comment about what you thought of today's video, as it directly helps the channel. As always, I've left a fantastic video here at the end just for the loyal viewers. It tells the story of Pastry, a boy who fell into a hole after a giant pastry fell on his head and was reborn in a world of fantasy and magic, where he'll do everything to create the land of sweets. Click on the screen here to check it out, it's sensational. See you next time, and peace out.